Hey, Crew peeps, welcome back to the Crew Philly YouTube page. It's your boy, Josh, back at you again to host a new series, all based on these things called Thrive Studies. You can go to thrivestudies.com or you can download the Thrive Studies app. And these are just topical Bible studies that have been put together for middle school, high schoolers, and even adults to go through, take some time to look at the leader page so that you know how to kind of break down and explain the Bible study to other people. And really just with 20 or 30 minutes of prep time, you'll be able to jump right in to lead a small Bible study. And so we're going to be looking at one of these today. We're going to be looking at a lot of these, but today specifically, we're going to be looking at one from Thrive 1.0 called Perspective Living with Eternity in Mind from the Me series. And so before we jump into it, I just want to explain who the author is of the book that we're going to be looking at. So you might have heard of Paul the Apostle or Saul. You might know a little bit about him, but here are some facts about him. And so the Bible is full of stories about Paul. If you've ever read the book of Acts or seen the movie or the Jim Caviezel movie, right, about Paul and Luke, you might know a little bit about him. He was originally a Jewish leader who didn't believe Jesus was God. He was known for hunting down Christians and having them killed until he had his own encounter with God. He became a follower of Jesus and traveled all over, helping start some of the very first churches. And he wrote quite a few of the books of the New Testament in the Bible. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at Paul's perspective and how he lived with eternity in mind. And so as they were traveling, Paul and his friends went through some really crazy things. And so we're going to look at 2 Corinthians 11:24-28. And so it says 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me, Paul talking, 39 lashes. 3 times Paul was beaten with rods. Once Paul was stoned. 3 times Paul was shipwrecked. Once Paul spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. Paul had traveled on many long journeys. Paul had faced danger from rivers and from robbers. Paul had faced danger from his own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. Paul has faced danger in the cities, in the deserts, and on the seas. And Paul faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. Paul has worked hard and long, and during many sleepless nights. Paul has been hungry and thirsty and has often gone without food. Paul has shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep him warm. Then besides all this, Paul has the daily burden of his concern for all the churches. And so there's all these things that Paul has faced and has gone through. It's kind of crazy, right? The first thing, Paul received 39 minus 1 lashes, which is the same thing that they did to Jesus that splayed his back wide open. If you ever watch The Passion of the Christ, there's a really gory scene. Or if you ever go to thejesusfilm.org, you can watch My Last Day, which is a anime version of Jesus being crucified. And you can see kind of what that 39 minus 1 lashes looks like. It's crazy. But let's keep going on. And so we're going to look at how Paul reacted to these things by reading 2 Corinthians 1, 8-10. All right. And so this is just kind of a look at Paul's reaction to everything he's been through. And this is what he says. He says, "We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia," which is more like Turkey. "We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God, who raises the dead. And he did rescue us from mortal danger, and he will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in him, and he will continue to rescue us." So Paul, who has been beaten and slashed and stoned and has been shipwrecked and has been cold and hungry and shivering and all of these different things, he learned to not rely on himself, but to rely only on God, who, by the way, raises the dead. And God did rescue them from mortal danger, and he will rescue them again. That's Paul's confidence in God, that not only has he saved him, but he will continue to save him and will save him again. And so they have placed their confidence in him, and he will continue to rescue us. That's just that's crazy to have gone through all of this hardship, but to still rely solely and only on God, because he has placed his confidence in God. And so we're also going to look at 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. And it says this: "Therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." And so Paul is really trying to help us understand that the things we go through, and Paul says that this is light and momentary troubles. Paul got beat up for the gospel. Like, I mean, beat up. Paul had to have scars all over his body, and he calls it light and momentary troubles. But that those things are achieving for him eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And so he says, don't focus on the things that we can see now, but keep our focus on that which is unseen. The truths that we know about who God is, about the truth that God has told us, about the Holy Spirit that God has indwelt us with, our inheritance for the future that we have in heaven with him. And so Paul really had this difference made in his life, knowing that in hard times they were only temporary, and also that Jesus had suffered in the same way. And so let's think about this. How would it make a difference for you in facing hard times in your life if you knew that they were only temporary? Right? These things that we're going through right now, even right now with this coronavirus, it's only temporary, because there's a far greater eternity that awaits us. And so let's think about it this way. So think about a line right here, okay? On this side, it says past. On this side, it says future. And that's our eternity, right? And so this line continues going all the way this way, continues going all the way this way, and we are right here, smack dab in the middle. All right? Just this one little dot right here. That's us. That's our whole life, right here. This little dot on this big long line that extends forever. Our perspective also influences how we invest our life. And Jesus understood this. And so let's look at Matthew 6:19-21. Okay. And so it says, "Do not store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there your desires will be also." And so what kind of temporary treasures are we trying to invest in, right? Like, I have this computer here, right, with my Dachshund logo on it. We have this fancy house, and we have all these different things, but none of them mean anything for my future, for my eternity, because all of these things, even though they bring me comfort now, really, this house could break and fall apart. My computer could stop working at any moment. This phone that I'm recording this video on could go away at any moment. Um, but what types of things are eternal? And so the Bible references a few things that are eternal. They talk about God and His Word, and people. They also talk about faith and hope and love. And so, what I want us to think about: what ways in our temporary existence, right? This life that's only momentary. In what ways are we investing in things that last? In what ways can we invest in things that last? How can we, being temporary beings in an eternal world, make a difference in this world? And I think we can make a difference, guys and gals and ladies and everybody. I think we can make a difference in this world by living out the life of Jesus and living out the example of who Paul was. And so this is what I want to challenge you guys to. How can you invest in things that last? And I want you to think about this too. How much are you investing in things that don't last? Right? The whole perspective, the whole reason of talking about perspective and living with eternity in mind is changing the way that we live now, where we live for this momentary world, right? And we get caught up with the momentary struggles, but we discard eternity and we discard the future. But I want you to know you have a future. And I want you to know that your future can start today. You don't have to keep focusing and struggling with all of these momentary things that are happening. But we can start investing not only in ourselves, but in others in a way that will make a difference and last forever. And so let me pray for you guys. We'll end this video, and hopefully you can try to find some ways to invest in other people. And so, God, I just thank you so much for this time that we've had to come before you and to look at your word, to learn about who Paul is and the way that he followed after your son Jesus, after he was radically changed. And we thank you, God, that all of these things that are happening to us now are just light and momentary afflictions, but that they are building up for us eternal glory. And so I just ask you, God, that you would help us not to keep our eyes focused on those things that we can see, but that you would help us focus our lives on those things that are unseen, the truths of what it means to live eternally, to have a relationship with you, God. And God, I pray that you would help us figure out how to put into action faith, hope, and love, and build up eternal things in the people in our lives. And so my challenge to you guys is to figure out ways to be compassionate to those around you. Figure out ways to help those who are in need. And to live out the example that Jesus has set for us in his Bible. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe. And toodles.